Do you believe that love, this feeling we worship in songs, chase in stories, sacrifice for, suffer for us, actually about you? Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone whose gaze sets fire to something ancient in you. Your heart beats like it's trying to escape your chest. You say you're falling in love. But stop, really, stop and ask, who is falling? And what are you falling into? Now zoom out. Outside that cafe, a million others are doing the same thing. Dating, kissing, texting, longing, promising forever, cheating next week. Falling, rising, craving, collapsing. It looks like chaos, but underneath it all, what if it's something colder, darker, and entirely indifferent to your feelings? What if this entire dance isn't about intimacy or connection or even happiness, but about biology hijacking your soul? Schopenhauer thought so. He didn't romanticize love, he dismantled it. To him, what we call desire is a lie whispered by nature, and love, a trap disguised as transcendence. A cruel trick played by the will, that blind, impersonal force he believed, drives all existence. According to Schopenhauer, you are not seeking a partner, you are an unconscious puppet pulled by strings you cannot see, and likely never will. Still believe in love? Or let me ask differently. Have you ever loved someone with your whole being, only to later wonder if you ever truly knew the more, even yourself? Have you ever noticed how desire feels more like possession than connection, more like obsession than peace? Why is it that the more we desire someone, the more power they have over us? Why do we equate suffering with passion, rejection with longing, and unavailability with worth? Why is heartbreak, a literal tearing of our inner world, something we willingly risk over and over again? Is that romantic or pathological? Here's the paradox. Love is the one thing most people would claim gives life meaning, and yet it's the one experience that most reliably breaks us. It reveals our deepest vulnerabilities, exploits our illusions, and shatters our self-control. We become both hunter and prey in a game we don't understand, and yet we keep playing. Because something in us needs to. Something in us believes it's worth it. That love will save us, complete us, redeem us. But what if this belief isn't wisdom, it's conditioning? What if the very idea of romantic love as salvation is not an eternal truth, but a cultural hallucination? Schopenhauer warned us, we do not love with reason, we love with instinct. We do not choose whom we desire, the will chooses for us. And the will does not care about your peace of mind. It only cares about one thing: reproduction, continuation, the next life. You are merely a temporary vessel. You may say that's too cynical, but ask yourself, when you loved the hardest, were you free or were you possessed? And if you've ever looked back at someone you once ached for and felt nothing, what does that say about the permanence of what we call love? Could it be that we don't fall in love at all? Could it be that we are driven into it by a force we mistake for fate, but is really nature wearing a seductive mask? Sit with that discomfort. Because the next time you find yourself longing for someone, you may not be hearing the voice of your heart, but the echo of a will that couldn't care less about you. And yet, you still want to believe. Don't you? Let's go deeper. Shall we uncover what's really happening beneath the surface of love and desire? You feel desire. It flares in your chest, coils in your gut, takes control of your breath. You call it attraction, chemistry, destiny. But what if it's none of those things? What if it's an illusion crafted by forces that do not care whether you are fulfilled or destroyed? Schopenhauer believed that at the root of everything, every craving, every goal, every attachment is will, a blind, insatiable force that moves all living beings. This will does not think, does not feel, and does not care. It simply wants. It wants life to continue at any cost, and it uses you as the means. Your desires are not yours. That hunger you feel for another person is not a sacred connection, it's a biological imperative disguised as romance. And the cruelty of it? You can't tell the difference. not while you're in it. To Schopenhauer, what we call love is the most deceptive form of the will's manipulation. You believe you're falling into intimacy, when in truth, you're being used as a tool for genetic continuation. This is why we become irrational in love, because nature needs us blind. It cannot afford self-awareness. If we saw the truth, the human species might simply stop reproducing. But Schopenhauer wasn't alone in this dark vision. Carl Jung believed that what we call love often masks a psychological projection. You don't fall in love with them, you fall in love with your idea of them. You project your anima or animusir, unconscious feminine or masculine archetypo onto another person, and then worship the reflection as if it were divine. You see them as salvation, when in fact, you're only seeing yourself in a distorted mirror. This is why love can feel like madness. Because it is. It's a crisis of identity, of boundaries, of reason. As Jung once wrote, every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. Add romantic projection to that list. And what of Nietzsche? The philosopher who said that in individuals insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epics, it is the rule. He saw love, especially in its socially approved forms, as a tool of control. Institutions take this volatile human force and wrap it in ritual, marriage, vows, monogamy, loyalty. But underneath the structure is chaos, the chaos of instincts, of betrayal, of dissatisfaction. And what if we look to Sartre? For him, love was a fundamental problem of freedom. The moment you love another, you risk becoming dependent on their gaze, their choices, their validation. You surrender your autonomy to gain emotional security. But the tragedy? The other person is also free. They can leave. They can change. They can stop loving you. This means that love, paradoxically, creates the very conditions for existential anxiety. You want to be seen, to be chosen, but you can never own the other. So, you are always afraid. And fear poisons love. Aldous Huxley in Brave New World foresaw a society where love and desire were mechanized, sanitized, and stripped of meaning. He warned that when we confuse pleasure for connection, we create a culture of distraction where longing is never fulfilled, only fed in endless loops. Sound familiar? Scroll through your phone, dating apps, erotic content, hot takes on relationships. Behind it all is a haunting emptiness. We're surrounded by options, but starving for depth. Trained to chase dopamine, but untrained to confront loneliness. We swipe left on soul-searching. We double-tap lust and call it intimacy. And here lies the hidden problem. We think we are choosing love, but love is choosing us. Or more accurately, the will is. You think you're seeking a partner. But the truth is, you're being led by evolution, by trauma, by unconscious drives into patterns you didn't design and don't even see. You fall for people who activate your old wounds. You crave what validates your ego. You cling to what mimics your earliest attachments. And the worst part? You believe it's fate. But what if it's a script? A psychological program, buried deep inside, written not by gods or stars, but by neurons, hormones, and unresolved grief? This is the quiet violence of desire. It speaks with the voice of divinity, but moves with the hand of manipulation. And Schopenhauer, long before neuroscience or Jungian psychology, saw it. He knew that love was not freedom, it was enslavement to forces we're too terrified to confront. But we must confront them, because until we do, we remain passengers in our own lives drawn toward people, places, and promises, not because they're right for us, but because we are programmed to chase them. The question now is, what happens when we follow these invisible forces to their end? What does a life look like when shaped entirely by desires that were never truly ours to begin with? You fall for people who activate your old wounds. You crave what validates your ego. You cling to what mimics your earliest attachment 7, if those attachments were forged in pain. And this isn't just personal. It's systemic, invisible, cultural. The very fabric of our society is stitched together by myths about love, sewn deep into our consciousness before we're old enough to question them. Fairy tales, rom-coms, wedding traditions, love songs on repeat, they all whisper the same story. That to be complete, you must be chosen. That to be whole, you must belong to another. But Schopenhauer's shadow looms behind the curtain. If desire is not about happiness, but survival, then what we call falling in love may actually be a form of self-erasure. A surrendering of clarity, autonomy, even dignity, all in service of something we mistake for meaning, and we pay for it. Consider how many life-altering decisions are made under the spell of desire. People marry those they barely know, change cities, sabotage careers, abandon dreams, all because of a temporary fire they've mistaken for eternal flame. And then, when it cools as it always does, they are left staring at the ruins, unsure what happened, unsure who they even are. This isn't a rare tragedy. It's a common pattern. From a neurological standpoint, it makes perfect sense. The early stages of romantic love activate the brain like a drug. Dopamine floods your system. Serotonin drops. Cortisol, your stress hormone, rises. Your body reacts to romantic love the same way it reacts to addiction. You're not in control. You're chemically hijacked. No wonder we confuse obsession with devotion. No wonder we stay in toxic relationships, gaslight ourselves into enduring emotional hunger, interpret anxiety as chemistry. We were never taught the difference. And culturally, this distortion is reinforced. Society idealizes coupledom and pathologizes solitude. The single person is seen as incomplete, pitied, or viewed with suspicion. Entire industries are built on this anxiety-dating apps. Weddings, therapy, sex toys, self-help books, all cashing in on the terror of being alone. But here's the darker twist. Even when you find love, you may not escape the trap. Schopenhauer observed that the more passionately two people desire each other, the less likely they are to find lasting happiness. Why? Because the will doesn't care about your long-term joy, it only cares about mating. Once the biological goal is complete, the illusion often collapses. Lovers become strangers. Spouses become adversaries. Parents become co-managers of trauma. This is why desire is often followed by disillusionment. Not because love is flawed, but because the purpose of desire has been fulfilled. The spell lifts, the clarity returns. And suddenly you're asking, why did I ever want this person? Why did I give so much? Who was I during all of that? The truth is, you weren't yourself. You were a vessel for the will. You were an actor, playing out an ancient script. You believed it was fate, but it was instinct. You believed it was sacred, but it was strategy. And yet, we don't learn. We don't question. We romanticize suffering. We immortalize heartbreak. We convince ourselves that the depth of our pain proves the truth of our love. But maybe what it really proves is how deep the illusion runs. And what happens when you spend your life chasing illusions? You start to hollow out. Each failed love chips away at your trust, your openness, your ability to risk. You become cynical, or numb, or addicted to the chase. You swing between overattachment and emotional shutdown. In trying to escape loneliness, you build a prison of patterns. You become exactly what the will wants, a creature driven by hunger, mistaking it for purpose. But what if you refused to play the game? What if you saw the strings and began cutting them, one by one? What if, for the first time, you chose not to desire? There is a rebellion waiting, a strange and unsettling kind of freedom. And it begins not with falling in love, but with falling out of illusion. There's a rebellion waiting, a quiet, internal war. And it begins the moment you say, no more. No more mistaking desire for destiny. No more letting instinct masquerade as insight. No more giving your soul to a force that doesn't even know your name. But how do you break free from something that lives inside you? You start by looking it in the eye. Schopenhauer believed that the will, the blind force of craving, could never be truly extinguished, only transcended. And that transcendence begins not in denial, but in awareness, in the refusal to be fooled again. So you begin to watch. You sit with your desire, but you don't act on it. You let the craving rise, tighten. Now and you observe, like a scientist, not a slave. You ask, what does this urge want from me? Where is it trying to lead me? And do I want to go there? Or am I just obeying it? This is not easy. It's not romantic. It's not what movies teach you. But it is freedom. Because for the first time, you are not being pulled. You are choosing. This kind of rebellion isn't loud, it's surgical. You start dismantling the myths that run your life. The myth that love will complete you. The myth that being alone is failure. The myth that chemistry equals compatibility. The myth that suffering is proof of sincerity. You start to see how deeply these lies are embedded not just in culture, but in your nervous system. Your cravings don't come from logic. They come from memory, from patterns buried so deep you mistake them for types. You say, I always fall for people like this. But what you mean is, I'm still replaying the same emotional wound, hoping this time it won't bleed. And here is where the rebellion deepens. You begin to change not just your mind, but your conditioning. You learn to sit with solitude until it no longer feels like punishment. You learn to meet your emotional hunger with presence, not panic. You learn that desire is not a command, it's a suggestion. One, you can decline. And strangely, paradoxically, the moment you stop chasing love, something shifts. You begin to love differently, not from lack, not from fear, not to fill a hole, but from wholeness, from clarity. You no longer need another to rescue you from your emptiness, because you are no longer afraid of that emptiness. You've walked through it. You've named the monsters. You've made peace with your shadows. This is what Viktor Frankl called the defiant power of the human spirit, the ability to choose meaning even in the face of suffering, even when the world offers no guarantees. And it's here, in this space beyond craving, that real love can begin. Not the love that consumes, but the love that liberates. Not the love that possesses, but the love that witnesses. This love is not a transaction. It's not a role. It's not a chemical high. It's an encounter between two beings who no longer need to be rescued. But make no mistake, this kind of love is rare, because it cannot be found until you have died to the illusion. Until you have stepped off the carousel of craving and stood, trembling, in the terrifying stillness of selfhood. It's a love born after the fall, after the myth has burned to ash, after the part of you that begged to be chosen has gone silent. And perhaps that's what the ancients meant when they spoke of awakening. Not some ethereal bliss, but the sobering clarity that you were never broken, only baited, never unworthy, unknowing. You are not here to be consumed by love. You are here to witness it, to give it, to receive it without illusion. This is the rebellion. Not against love itself, but against the lie we've been told about what love is supposed to be. You are not here to serve the will. You are here to transcend it. And that brings us to the final truth. The one Schopenhauer glimpsed, but never fully said. The one that shatters everything we think we know about desire. You are not here to serve the will. You are here to see it and then to walk beyond it. And this is the terrifying, liberating, almost unbearable truth. Love is not the answer. Not the love you were taught to crave. Not the hunger, the high, the heartache dressed up as poetry. Not the kind that turns two people into prisoners of each other's projections. Because that kind of love isn't love. It's longing wearing a mask. It's the will in drag. It's nature's way of keeping you running in circles, chasing a feeling that vanishes the moment you try to hold it still. Here is the final realization. Desire will never lead you home, because desire does not want peace. It wants motion. It lives in the gap between what you have and what you think you need. The moment you reach it, it moves the finish line. It whispers, not this, more, again. And so we spend our lives in pursuit of the one, of closure, of ecstasy, of meaning in another's eyes. But what if the most radical act of love is to stop pursuing? What if the answer is not to find someone who makes you whole, but to remember you were never incomplete? In this stillness, something strange begins to happen. You stop needing. You start being. And in that being, in that raw, unguarded presence, you find something deeper than desire. You find compassion, clarity, a kind of love that doesn't burn, it illuminates. You begin to see people not as solutions, but as mysteries. You stop asking, "How can you complete me?" and start asking, "Who are you truly?" This is where real love lives, in the space where nothing is owned, nothing is clung to, nothing is performed, just presence, just truth, just reverence for another soul's journey, even if it never merges with your own. Schopenhauer's final truth, the one most cannot bear to face, is that the more we crave, the more we suffer. The more we clutch, the more it slips through our fingers. The more we seek to possess, the more we lose ourselves. So we must ask, what if letting go is the only way to actually feel? What if the love we're chasing has been here all along, buried beneath our need to be desired? And if that's true, if the deepest love is the one that asks nothing, then you have nothing to fear and nothing to lose, because you are already it. You are already enough. You are already free. But to realize this is to mourn. You must mourn the fantasy of love that never existed. Mourn the person you thought would save you. Mourn the self you became trying to be worthy. And then, after the grief, comes silence. And in that silence, something extraordinary begins to bloom. Not the addictive fire of desire, but the quiet, steady warmth of awakening. Not the chaos of falling in love, but the clarity of rising into it. You stop searching for the one, and you become the one, not in some self-help cliché, but in the most sacred existential sense, the one who sees clearly, the one who chooses with intention, the one who loves without chains. This is the revolution the will fears. This is the awareness that breaks its hold, not by fighting it, but by stepping outside its games entirely. And in that space, between the craving and the clinging, between the story and the silence, you find the truth. The kind of truth that can't be put into words, only lived. So now, the question is no longer, who will love me? But rather, what can love become when it is no longer a need, but a gift? And what might you become once you stop being a vessel for desire and start being the flame that lights the world? That answer is yours to discover.